Hello everyone, welcome to the technical session 2A on disaster risk reduction. I'm Chaturangani Jayakuri. I'm one of the co-chairs of this session, and I'm a researcher attached to Global Disaster Resilience Center, University of Huddersfield, UK. And together with me, Dr. Buddhika Hapuarachi is co-chair in this session. So, Dr. Hapuarachi, over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaturangani. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Great to see you all in this technical session 2A. And we have about 6 innovative research papers, in line to make the presentations at this session. So let's start with the first session and first presentation. Dr. Chaturangani will brief the some house rules regarding this particular session. Over to you, Dr. Chaturangani.
Thank you, Dr. Hapuarachi. Here we have, as Dr. Hapuarachi mentioned, we have 6 presentations lined up here today and 6 very interesting topics, I would say. So without taking much time, let's start from the first session. So house rules are, there will be 10 minutes for each presentation and 2 to 3 minutes. If any presentation is not there, we can even have 5 minutes for the Q&A session. At this point, I would like to invite all our online audience to ask your question via our chat box. So we will direct at the end of the presentation, we can direct them to the presenter. So Dr. Hapuarachi, over to you to introduce the first presenter.
Thank you very much, Chaturangani. So the first paper is on analysis and comparison of the earthquakes of the Indonesian and Macron zones towards possible tsunami generation in future. Paper has been submitted by S. Jayavira and S. Premalal. The presentation will be done by Mr. Sarath Premalal. Over to you, Mr. Sarath Premalal.
Good evening. My name is Premalal, and other 2 co-authors for this study is Mr. Jayavira from DMC, the director DMC, and Mr. Asidani Silva, researcher, Huddersfield University, UK. Before start the presentation, I would like to explain about tsunamis and criteria used to issue tsunami warning in Sri Lanka. A tsunami is a series of waves or surges most commonly caused by an earthquake beneath the seafloor. Tsunami is a system of ocean gravity waves formed as a result of large-scale disturbances of the seabed in a short duration of time, mostly due to an earthquake. Tsunami can be generated with a volcanic eruption and submarine landslide over the ocean. So Sri Lanka do not have much experience about tsunami except 2004 tsunami, and these are the factors satisfied to generate a tsunami. So it should be underneath the ocean and should be over the convergence and subduction zone. So in the Indonesian Ocean, there are 2 subduction zones. One is at Macron zone and other one is Indonesian subduction zone. So the physical parameters to generate tsunamis are the magnitude of the earthquake should be greater than 6.5 and depth should be less than 100 kilometer. This study focused to find the behavior of earthquake which is having the magnitude above 6.5 and depth less than 100 kilometer at Indonesian subduction zone and Macron subduction zone. So just compare these 2 pictures. This is Indonesian and this is Macron subduction zone. So you can see over the Indonesian Macron subduction zone, there was 2 earthquakes underneath the sea. Having the physical parameter mentioned earlier, but Indonesian zone there were more. So Indonesian zone is much active than the Macron subduction zone. Yeah, let me explain the categorization of historical earthquake. So you can see the behavior of earthquake underneath the sea and over the land. having different magnitudes, but greater than 6.5. Since 1900, since the year 1900, highest number of this is decadal categorization. The highest number of earthquake occurred during 2001 and 2010. It is nearly 30% from the from the period 1900 to 2019. So from total period, this is 30%. So there is an increasing trend of earthquake over the Indonesian subduction zone, but it cannot be used to predict future possible earthquakes. Yeah, now we look at generation of tsunami. So there is a possibility to generate three kind of tsunami. So the one is the destructive local tsunami. That is not much affected for the region, only for the local impacts. And the other one, destructive regional tsunami. And the most dangerous one is destructive ocean-wide tsunami. So the good example is 2004 tsunami. So these are the possible magnitude ranges. It can be developed tsunamis in different explain different kind explain. So Sri Lanka is the most vulnerable for destructive ocean-wide tsunami and destructive regional tsunami, but Sri Lanka is not vulnerable for the local tsunami. So then, if an earthquake occurred over these two zones, I mean that Macron zone, so Indonesia subduction zone, having 7.0 magnitude. So Sri Lanka may be vulnerable, and sometimes tsunami can be generated. So we'll see how it is possible with the past tsunami generations. So analysis of past tsunamis are the major part of this study. From literature survey, it was found that there were 13 tsunamis. There were 13 tsunamis generated in the Indonesian Ocean. The 12 from Indonesian subduction zone. The one in 1945, which was generated over the Macron subduction zone. So you can see the dart buoy system established over the Indonesian Ocean after 2004 tsunami to find, to capture the tsunami waves which generated due to some earthquake. So this is a kind of this is a picture of a dart buoy. So dart buoy basically measures the pressure of the water column. So it converted into a wave, and from that we can identify whether the tsunami wave were generated or not. As this buoy network started in 2006, we just analyzed the waves after 2006 tsunami. Yeah, these are the dart buoy records since 2006. You can see how it captured the tsunami waves since 2006, right? So you can see the 2006 also somewhere here, right? And 2007, right? This picture shows the location of dart buoys. These are the location of dart buoys, and historical earthquakes after 2006. After 2006. Yeah, to find the wave how far wave has traveled. So just I got one example for the tsunami. So for the earthquake occurred in 2012 April 11th, and it captured these two dart buoys. So it traveled. So from this from this information we can identify it has traveled about 900 more than 900 kilometers, because from here to here, the distance from here to here is 900. So it traveled more than 900 kilometers. Yes, these are the categorization of tsunamis and earthquake for the different different magnitudes for the season 1900 to 2020, that is whole season, and for 2001 to 2019. So you can see these are so you can this represent 1900 to 2020, and 2001 to 2019 shows this graph. So you can see there is a increase. I mean that there is increase in trend of generation of tsunami for the 2001 and between 2001 and 2019. So we are little I mean that vulnerable for the maybe for the future tsunami. So we have to be much careful for that. Finally, I would like to summarize all the whole study, and I would like to provide some findings. So analysis indicated a slight signal for increase in strong earthquake in the Indonesian subduction zone, with some ups and downs in a long time span. There were 5 tsunamis occurred due to earthquake in the Indonesian region during the decade of 2001 to 2019. It is not a good sign for Indian Ocean countries. And wave reported at that buoy 23401 of the earthquake on 10th August 2009 at the location, and distance from the earthquake to Dart buoy is nearly 800 kilometers. So the generated tsunami due to an earthquake on 11th April 2012, I just explained it during my presentation, was also captured by Dart 23227 and 23401. Which are about 670 kilometer and 900 kilometer far from location of the earthquake. Sri Lanka is about 1,200 kilometer west of the Andaman Sea. With this information, there is a chance to hit a regional tsunami if there will be some earthquake over the Andaman Trench. There is a higher possibility to generate local and regional tsunami from earthquake with moderate magnitudes. For such cases, it is not easy to make a decision where there is a chance to generate a tsunami. Therefore, lead time to issue a tsunami warning will be short. Considering this situation, it is important to implement some strategies to evacuate people from the vulnerable coastal zones within a shorter period. And establishment of an information and communication technology based warning dissemination system until the last mile, and identification of the most vulnerable coastal area with proper evacuation routes are important. Develop infrastructure for vertical evacuation is one of the solutions for people in such areas. The comprehensive standard operation procedure should be developed with the proper time calculation to decision making and dissemination information until the last mile, with considering evacuation time from the most vulnerable location. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Premalal. We can take one or two questions, immediate questions, and if there are, if you want some more time to conceptualize your question, we can also, at the end of the session, we can also allow some time for the participants to ask questions. But if there are any urgent, immediate questions, we can take those to Mr. Premalal.
Yeah, Buddhika, I think I will ask the question. It's very interesting presentation, Mr. Sarah Premalal. It shows a very good analysis showing the possible tsunami generation. And it's also the possible generation is much higher during the last decades. It shows very nicely, and very nicely pointed out the need of continuous focus on the tsunami. And with these tsunami-based recommendation early warning systems and all. So I would like to ask, are there any, you have identified some recommendations as well. Are there any future studies attached to this study? So like in terms of the standard operator procedures, we need to do this like that. Are there any future studies attached to this?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think the better standard operation system is very much important until the last mile. So that last year, so we tried to and we finalized one SOPs that is almost until the last mile. So actually we included the time also. I mean that the dissemination time and the response time and everything we included in the SOP. So I think it has to be strengthened further, and we have to go for the community level to strengthen the present SOP. What we have prepared. So we to strengthen it, we have to go for the community level SOP development. So probably you know that in the next few after the COVID, so we are going to start that part also. Is it okay?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Varad. Thank you very much. So according to the original plan, the second presentation is on post-disaster reconstruction for resilient community, but as the presenter is not here today, I would like to move on to the next presentation. It's titled Sri Lanka Navy's Approach Towards Effective and Efficient Emergency Response Mechanism. It will be presented by Mr. Dumindu Dayananda. Mr. Dumindu Dayananda, it's over to you.
Sri Lanka Navy's approach towards disaster risk reduction by Lieutenant Commander Dumindu Dayananda from Sri Lanka Navy. The aim of my presentation today is to introduce Sri Lanka Navy's role in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief and initiatives taken on disaster risk reduction. Sri Lanka is not experiencing large-scale disasters compared to other countries in the region and Asia, except the one-time occurred event, Tsunami in 2004. Yet significant effects from disasters observed over the years, mostly during the monsoonal seasons, supported by the topography and high population density of the country. What you can see on the screen is the major disasters affected Sri Lanka from 2005 to 2018. What I want to emphasize here is the significance of floods. Sri Lanka Navy's role is highlighted during hydrometeorological disasters being the most common disasters in the country to assist victims as part of our benign role and aid to civil power. Sri Lanka Navy traditionally deployed flood response teams to save victims during every flood event in the country. However, during the national level floods in year 2011, it is understood that the existing emergency response mechanism was seemingly inefficient to address the needs of the victims island-wide and highlighted the necessity of holistic approach for disaster risk reduction. My objective was to introduce measures to be taken by the Sri Lanka Navy for effective and efficient emergency response operations, ensuring the disaster risk reduction. Methodology. Sri Lanka Navy decided to find ways for effective and efficient emergency response operations, taking responsibility as a stakeholder in the national disaster management mechanism. Accordingly, Sri Lanka Navy approach was first to find gaps and gray areas of the existing disaster response mechanism in consultation with the national policies, plans for disaster mitigation, preparedness, and response. Then to introduce new ways and means to enhance effectiveness and efficiency of every phase of disaster management cycle, targeting disaster risk reduction in palm with universally accepted principles and practices along with custom-made solutions for the local setting. As you will know, before 2015, it was the Hugo framework for action. Then afterwards, the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. So we follow those guidelines. Sri Lanka Navy's approach towards safer Sri Lanka. Preamble. Last phase of humanitarian operations conducted by Sri Lanka Defence Forces to eradicate terrorism from the country brought an insight into humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations of Sri Lanka Navy. Civilians used to flee away from terrorist-controlled areas using boats and some other unsecure means during the latter part of the war in 2009. Naval units engaged in handling those internally displaced personnel at sea, especially the Marine Special Squadrons of Sri Lanka Navy, ensured the safe rescue of those civilians from danger. What you can see on the screen is the transformation of a Marine Special Squadron, namely RABS, into a disaster response unit because of their experience during war as an humanitarian actors. Formation of Rapid Response Rescue Relief Unit, ORU, is done in 2012 to swiftly engage in HADR operations. In the way towards effective and efficient rescue operation, we have understood that only rapid response or the preparedness won't do the job for effective and efficient rescue operation. For that, we need both readiness and rapid response. Steps taken towards effective and efficient emergency response operations. As I mentioned, our rescue unit, ORU, has a proper command and control structure, starting from a director, commanding officer, then certain group commanders and rescue teams. So rescue team is the smallest entity comprising with 4 members. Those teams and groups are deployed in disaster identified areas of the country, as you can see on the screen. Then the establishment of Sri Lanka Navy Disaster Management Training Center at the Gangewadi Putlam, because this location of this training center is very much important in the near vicinity of the Vilpattu Sanctuary, then the Kalawa Estuary and the Putlam Lagoon. There we have flood rescue simulation site, landslide rescue simulation site, because these simulation sites are very much important in terms of training the first responders, as we can expose them to the real case scenarios. Then we have collapse structured rescue simulation site also, as you can see on the screen. Then IDP camping simulation site, there we follow the SPA standards. When I talk about the courses conducted at the Disaster Management Training Center, we have disaster management and first responder courses for the Navy, sister services, police, and the civilians. Then international life-saving certification courses, because our first responders are qualified, internationally accepted certifications from the International Life-Saving Federation. Then small boat handling and maintenance courses. And importantly, we have specific HADR practical training modules or the sessions conducted in combination with the foreign delegations. We do conduct district level or the community-based training programs for the civilian voluntary groups in consultation with the Disaster Management Center on emergency response, first aid, and life-saving. This is the progress of training assistance rendered by Sri Lanka Navy in the disaster management field. Preparedness of emergency response teams is very much important. We have a concept of rescue toolbox. All the identified essential items are packed in a box, and what the rescue team has to do is only to take it away from the rescue stores and move to the disaster area. So this makes the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the operation. And we have certain checklist and reporting procedures. Checklists are very much important. It contains the contact details and the items the rescue teams carry and what other areas deployed. And reporting procedure, we normally after every 4 hours, we have a certain situational report to the operation rooms and the headquarters. Then use of drone technology in emergency response operations. What we do is when our teams are deployed to a disaster location, first of all, we'll have the aerial view using our drone and evaluate the situation before actually deploying our teams. Then continuous training, standard operating procedures and mock drills are conducted. Thereby we can adjust our SOPs in the end. Other measures for disaster risk reduction. Role of Sri Lanka Coast Guard as an entity under Sri Lanka Navy at present in emergency response. There we have life-saving post island-wide. Then there have some other components for oil spill management and marine pollution control. Establishment of disaster response unit. It is located in Verisar, Colombo. There we do repair works, transit stores, and safekeeping of emergency response equipment. Then research and development projects also conducted there on the DRR. DRU designed mobile kitchen and mobile RO plant. Mobile kitchen is very much important to provide hot cooked meals during a disaster for the victims and the rescue teams also. Then RO plant is to provide the healthy water, clean water for the victims, because we all know during a disaster situation, the water contamination is a common case. Establishment of Sri Lanka Navy GIS unit for collection of disaster data, flood mapping, risk mapping, and situational analysis for effective and efficient deployment of first responders is done. Then let me explain something different. The establishment of Maritime Rescue Coordination Center, MRCC Colombo, at the Naval Headquarters premises to meet international obligations of Sri Lanka under Search and Rescue Convention. Maybe you are aware of the fire accident to tank MT New Diamond in last September in the eastern seas of Sri Lanka. So MRCC Colombo effectively coordinated the rescue and salvage operation for that fire-stricken ship. Let's witness some of the disaster response activities of Sri Lanka Navy. As you all know, our first aim was to conduct rescue operations during a disaster. Apart from that, we do transfer victims to safer locations, as you can see on the screen. Then distribution of food and refreshments, cleaning of clogged bridges, culverts and canals, because this is very much important to reduce the flood effect. Distribution of drinking water as a relief service, then cleaning of wells and other water sources as a post-disaster activity, repairing of damaged houses as the reconstruction phase. Then this is the progress in brief. How many number of personnel we have rescued, transferred, and how many number of teams deployed for search and rescue. Let me explain something way forward. We have plans of increasing our naval search and rescue teams up to 250 by 2022, then achieve international standards and international recognition for Sri Lanka Navy first responders, then develop disaster management training center at Puttalam into an international level training center. This is from my side. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much, Domindo, for the very interesting presentation. Are there any questions for Mr. Domindo? Any burning questions? Okay, then I'll have one question. So it's very interesting presentation first. You have identified some best practices, I think, using 3 approaches: identifying gaps, and then learning from mistakes, and then searching for the modern technology, which is really important, which is a really good approach as well. So when you're identifying these practices, best practices, have you given a space for community participation for this from the research aspect? Have you taken the community's ideas for this identification of these best practices, Mr. Domingo?
Yeah, it is done. One way is we have conducted some surveys in identified areas for disasters, especially floods. Our teams went there and discussed with the personnel and share their experience with us. So then we know how best we should respond for the next disaster. The other aspect is we do conduct community-based training for the selected volunteers. You know that from the government side to the disaster management center, some boats and the engines are distributed, but the problem is they don't know how to operate. We found that. So what we have done is we went there and discussed with them and conducted some training for them. Now they can operate their boats. In addition, what we have done is we have conducted emergency response operations training, life-saving training, first aid training for those the community level selected personnel. So thereby, during a disaster, we could be able to utilize them for supporting us, assisting us, because they know the area. Terrain is under their control. So then there are some occasions they have helped us. So ultimately, the overall operations are effective and efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Domindo. Of course, yes, for an effective emergency response mechanism, another aspect would be the multi-stakeholder participation. As you see in Sri Lanka, what are the barriers for this multi-stakeholder participation? Do you see it as a barrier?
Of course, this is my personal opinion, not from the Navy side, because what I have observed is there are many stakeholders but works in isolation. If I say one example, now the the flood forecasting, or let's say flood mapping. There are many stakeholders. They have started something, but sometimes very reluctant to share it for the betterment of the all the country. That is there. So and there are subject experts. So if we all get together, we could do a good job, I guess. That is one of the barrier.
Very interesting discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Kundu. And Butika, you can introduce the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chatrangani, and thank you very much, Sadayananda, for that interesting presentation. So we will move to the next presentation, next paper presentation. This is on interrelation between landscape alteration and microclimate changes in the National Capital Territory of Delhi, India, by Dr. Suresh Yadev. Over to you, Dr. Yadev.
Hello everyone, Honorable Chair, Co-Chair, respect faculty members and my global friends. I am Dr. Sandesh Yadav from India, and the topic of my presentation is interrelation between landscape alteration and macroclimatic changes in the National Capital Territory of Delhi, India. So let us begin with the introduction part. As we all know that landscape of the earth is undergoing transformation, alteration since time immemorial. Increased demographic pressure coupled with fast pace of urbanization and industrialization have resulted in expansion of built up and shrinkage of vegetation cover. These changes in biophysical composition of urban regions have intensified the microclimatic changes, visually urban heat island effect, heat wave, heat waves, and winter warming effect. Now coming to the objectives. First objective is to assess the landscape alteration for the period 1990 to 2015 in the NCT of Delhi, India. Also to assess the land transformation from different categories of land use land cover to built up during the period 1990 to 2015 in the NCT of Delhi, India. Second objective is to assess the change in land surface temperature during the period 1990 to 2015 in the NCT of Delhi, India. Third objective is to assess the scenario of vegetation destruction in the light of normalized difference vegetation index during the period 1990 to 2015 in the NCT of Delhi, India. And the last objective is to analyze the relationship between landscape alteration and land surface temperature in order to understand the microclimatic changes in the NCT of Delhi, India. This is the database and methodology adapted for the present research study. Table is showing the details of the digital data which have been used for the year 1990, 2000 and 2015. Further, we have used several formulas to calculate different aspects. Like we have used the formula to calculate rate of change per year. Then we have used to carry out the accuracy assessment. And after this, we have also used these particular formulas to calculate the land surface temperature. And in the last, we have used this particular formula to calculate the normalized difference vegetation index for the period 1990, 2000, 2015. This is the location map of the study area. And this is the conceptual framework which we have used in the entire study. These are the maps of land use land cover changes for the period 1990, 2000, 2015. Before interpreting maps, I would like to make one thing very, very clear about these maps, that here a red color is showing the built up expansion, while the green color is showing the vegetation cover, and the yellow color is depicting the cropland area. Now we can see that the intensity and density of color red have increased during the period 1990 to 2015, justifying the built up expansion. And this is a table containing the figures for each and every land use land cover category and the area under each land use land cover category during the period 1990, 2000 and 2015. And also we have carried out the percentage change. And if we go through the percentage change, then we will find that built up have experienced percent change in positive manner, while the other categories have experienced percentage change in negative manner. Means the land from other categories is decreasing while the land under built up is increasing, and thus again justifying the built up expansion in the study area. Now here is the table of accuracy assessment and kappa statics for the year 1990, 2000 and 2015. And this accuracy assessment justifies the topological error and the level of accuracy of the images which is being used in the present research study. Now, these are the map which are showing the land transformation from different categories of land use, land cover to built up during the period 1990, 2000, 2015. If we go through the first map, then purple color is showing the land transformation from fallow land to built up. While if we come to the next map of the year 2000 to 2015, then we will see that there are some green patches, there are some red patches. And these green patches justifying the conversion of land from cropland category to built up. And then red patches are justifying the conversion of vegetation land into built up. And then there is an overall map for the period 1990 2015, which is showing the overall changes which have taken place during the period 1990 2015, and how and the categories from which the land is getting converted into built up. Now, before moving to discuss the aspects like land surface temperature and normalized difference vegetation index, I would like to discuss this simplified LST and NDVI relationship matrix. Now, as per this matrix, the full cover means the region having a full cover of vegetation experiences a maximum rate of evapotranspiration, means moisture is maximum in the air, and that moisture is resulting in cooling effect, regulating the temperature, and thus maintaining you can say a normal surroundings, neither hot neither cold. Okay, now as we move towards the left, then we will see that partial cover and then bare soil. What about the bare soil? Bare soil will experience more and more evaporation because there is nothing like vegetation cover to cover the surface and to protect the moisture in the ground, or you can say water from the pond to evaporate. So maximum evaporation will take place, and that particular area means bare area will experience the maximum heating, and then the land surface temperature will be high, while the land with full cover vegetation will experience the low heating, and so the land surface temperature will be low as compared to the bare soil. Now, these are the maps of land surface temperature for the period 1990, 2000, 2015. If we go through the maps, then we will see that the pink patches and red patches are increasing over the period. Now, what are these pink patches and red patches? These pink patches and red patches are showing the increased land surface temperature due to built up expansion over the period. And now, this is the pixel overlay analysis of land surface temperature for the period 1990 2015. Now, the thing which we will understand from this pixel overlay analysis is that the beginning point temperature for the year 1990, 2000, and 2015 have increased considerably. If we go through the 1990 and 2000, then the beginning point was near about 13 degrees Celsius, while the temperature increased, and for the year 2015, it became around 18 degrees Celsius. These are the maps of normalized difference vegetation index for the period 1990, 2000, 2015. Now, the red color over here is also showing the absence of healthy vegetative cover. Once again, I would like to repeat that red color over here is showing the absence of a healthy vegetative cover. Means this particular region with the red color is not having any sort of a vegetation. Means what this is, there is absence of vegetation, and this particular region must be occupied by some sort of a non-vegetative cover like built up. This is the scatter plot diagram between NDVI and LST, and this scatter plot diagram shows that there is a negative correlation between NDVI and LST. Now, the negative correlation between the two means that whenever there is a high value of NDVI, then there will be a lower value of LST, while if there will be a lower value of NDVI, then there will be a high value of LST. This is the Pearson and Spearman correlation and regression analysis justifying the negative correlation between the land surface temperature and NDVI. Now, after discussing the land surface temperature, NDVI, and the correlation between the two, we have come on the inference that there is some sort of a increase in land surface temperature. Now, what this increase in land surface temperature have done. This increase in land surface temperature have disturbed the local heat budget and thus making the surroundings much more warmer as compared to the previous years. And because of these warmer surroundings, what is happening that the urban heat island effect is getting intensified, and so the surroundings are becoming much more warmer, and then these warmer surroundings are affecting the thermal comfort of urban dwellers. And similar things are happening during the summer season when heat waves approaches. Then this particular heating of the Earth's surface again intensifies the heat waves and thus making the surroundings much more warmer, resulting in much more serious impact on the public health of the urban dwellers. And so is happening in the case of winters, that we are experiencing winter warming effect, resulting in decrease in number of chill days. And this is how I end my presentation, and I thank each and everyone for having a patience hearing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yadev. That's very interesting for your very interesting presentation. I think this is something in discussion among lots of scientists on urbanization and different effects. The urbanization is considered as a main risk driver. So looking at the heat island effect and microclimate change is very important for, I think, not only for the Delhi and India, it's for the entire region. So thank you very much for that interesting paper presentation. So it's open for
Thank you, sir.
any questions.
Yes, Vidika, I think thank you, Sandesh, for the interesting presentation. So, for the microclimatic changes, with the need of the global warming changes as well, microclimatic changes to cities are very important, of course. So, apart from vegetation, another two aspects which can affect to the microclimatic changes would be the elevation and inclusion of water-related features would be also another two factors to consider. So likewise, have you identified any recommendations to increase positively these microclimatic changes and to reduce the temperatures?
It is a really nice question that you are considering this thing from a very different point of view. So, as far as the recommendations are considered, that the thing which we can do, cause what is happening, if I take the case of India, that we have attained urbanization. Okay, now we can't go back. So now from here onwards, we have to take care. And for this, I have also proposed a cascading model. And this cascading model says that we have to work at the three levels. First, all those cities which have attained the level of urbanization. Second, we have those cities which are undergoing urbanization. Third are the potential cities which will be targeted for urbanization because population is increasing and there are other several developmental processes are going on. So what we can do for the cities which have attained the level of urbanization, we can impose strict norms like LEED certification, Graha certification for the mega projects of construction, for adopting the recycling and all those construction materials which will absorb less heat, and re-radiate less heat. Okay, further provision of roof gardening, green gardening, and then hanging gardens, which are being followed in India nowadays. Okay, now comes the second, that those cities which are undergoing urbanization. Here I would like to strictly recommend that here we can follow the conditions, that because we are undergoing urbanization, so much more emphasis on green norms in the projects. Now come thirds, the targeted cities. Those targeted cities must be reserved for the green projects only, so that the further expansion of microclimatic regions cannot take place and intensification of microclimatic changes do not take place. This is the strategic manner we can deal with this. Because just a little example I would like to say, that just imagine electric heaters around you. One electric heater emitting radiations, and then another electric heater. Now what happens if I place a number of electric heater around you? So it will heat up the surroundings. The same thing is happening with the microclimatic changes. One city will undergo microclimatic changes, intensification, heat waves, urban heat island. Then the second city will follow the same pattern. Third city will follow the same pattern. Fourth city, the entire country will become a furnace. And that will become a condition which you can't control. High consumption patterns of energy, high consumption patterns of electricity will result in energy crisis, water crisis. So to minimize the cascading impact, we need to follow the cascading model which is being proposed by me, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much, Sandesh. In very interesting recommendations as well. Hopefully, these recommendations can be taken up to the policy level and for the implementation as well.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Buddhika, you can introduce the second present, the fifth presenter. Should I introduce?
I will proceed then. Thanks. So the next presentation is on developing tsunami risk reduction strategies for Gampaha district, derived from Wave 17 tsunami simulation exercise. In Vitanage and A. Nishanta, the presentation will be made by Nadika Vitanage. Over to you, Nadika.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and co-chairs. I'm Nadika Vitanage, Assistant Director, Education and Awareness, and this is a joint paper with Ajit Nishant, Assistant Director, District Disaster Management Coordinating Unit, Gampaha. The title of the presentation is Developing Tsunami Risk Reduction Strategies for Gampaha District, derived from Wave 17 Tsunami Simulation Exercise. This is the content of the presentation. First, the introduction. Indian Ocean consisting in two earthquake-generated subduction zones as Makran and Sunda. There are several reasons for tsunami occurred. As a major natural reasons are earthquake and volcanic eruption. Example, 1833 volcanic eruptions in Krakatoa, Indonesia, and 2004 earthquake in Indonesia. Sri Lanka lies in the Indo-Australian plate, seems to be far away from the plate boundary. According to the 2005, Dissanayake has explained, Sri Lanka need to be classified as moderate earthquake-prone area because of formation in new plate boundary close to the southern coastal area, 400-500 kilometers far away from Sri Lanka. This is the 1833 earthquake in volcanic eruptions and the tsunami generated incident, and it give the less damage to the Galle, Negombo and Ampara area. And this is the earthquake eruption 2004, and it give the huge damage for the 2/3 of the coastal area of the trade. In 2005, government of Sri Lanka has introduced the Disaster Management Act, and according to the Disaster Management Act, National Council of Disaster Management and Disaster Management Center has established. For early warning dissemination and handling, 24/7 EOC also established under the Disaster Management Center. For tsunami dissemination, Disaster Management Center using the several techniques including tsunami early warning towers, and there are 77 early warning towers are located in the 14 coastal belt of the area. This study has conducted from the Wave 17 National Tsunami Simulation Exercise as organized by the Disaster Management Center with the collaboration of national, international, stakeholder agencies and other part of the global initiatives of the Global World Tsunami Awareness Day on 5th November 2014. Tsunami from the Sunda subduction site highly affected for the east and south coast of the country, but very limited research and modeling for the Makran subduction zone in earlier. But at the present, IOGWC has established a new early warning receiving point for the Oman to determine and identify the tsunami areas, risk areas for the India-Pakistan side. If it is a earthquakes or a tsunami for a eastern that Makran subduction side, it will be give the high damage and economic loss for the country, because the west coast of the area consisting with industries and the power plants, more hotels and more residential areas. The study area is the Gampha district, and it is consisting with the 13 DS division and 2 DS division. Negombo and Wattala is located in the coastal side, and the study area is the Negombo and Wattala DS divisions. The major objective of this study is to test the sustained end-to-end early warning system for the tsunami, national to the local level, and the specific objectives are to identify the tsunami risk factors for the Gampha district and to develop risk reduction strategies for Gampha district. The methodology consisting for the hazard, vulnerability, consequence analysis to identify the tsunami risk and to develop the risk reduction strategies combining with these risk factors and the capacity analysis. And the structural and mitigation strategies were identified from the Wave 17 exercise. The assessment methodology applied follows the people-centered approach to deliver relevant risk and vulnerability information for the purpose of early warning and disaster management. Risk has identified with the score values of the tsunami inundation areas, and the vulnerability is identified with the 3 variables: settlement and other infrastructure facilities and built up areas, and the consequence analysis with a combination with the score value of hazard, vulnerability, and the consequence will identify the risk value. Then the risk divided with the capacities, identify the risk index values. Then finally the Tsunami 17 Wave 17 exercise gave the lesson learned to develop the structural and non-structural mitigation strategies. So these are the primary and secondary data applied for this research. For conducting and organize this tsunami simulation exercise, conduct many workshops for the government officials, non-government organizations, the private sectors, and media officials, triforces, police, and awareness program for the vulnerable communities as well as for the religious leaders. Most of the safety centers are the religious centers. And to develop the maps and other statistical analysis, we also use some digital data, tsunami inundation, digital maps, demographic data, land use data, and other references materials, books, journals to identify and analyze for the different modeling for Sundra and Macron subduction zones, and GPS, GIS softwares, and the Microsoft Excel access for the statistical analysis. And for this major important thing in this analysis is the statistical analysis consisting of the subgroup analysis method. The method of calculating is same for each variable. To percenting for the each was determined by the dividing with the number of each variable in the block by the total number of entire study area. Then the selected for the final hazard, vulnerable, and consequence summations. So example, to identify the X value, the total number of tsunami affected area in the each DS division divided with the total number of tsunami affected area in all DS division. And the final tsunami affected scope value is identified with the identified X value divided by the maximum X values. All these score values has varied from 0 to 1.c. The following table represents how to identify these X values, maximum X values, score values, and finally, in the highest score, give the highest rank of the hazard, vulnerability, or risk. So this is according to these score values, we identified the hazard area extent with the Negombo and high vulnerable score values for the Negombo DSD divisions and high consequence values according to the 2004 tsunami affected damage data. High value goes to the Negombo DS division. So combination of the hazard, vulnerability, and consequence high risk values has identified for the Negombo DS division, but this is we done for get some idea about to the how to use this hazard vulnerability and consequence values, but the hazard vulnerability with the hasn't any more variation with the Vattala and Nigambo. So both these DS division have a very high hazard and vulnerability. And to give the proper risk assessment, we want to calculate the available resources capacities of this area. The capacity analysis conducted using the available resources in this area. So these are the capacity. This is the 1833 earthquake in volcanic eruptions and the tsunami generated incident, and it give the less damage to the Galle, Nigambo and Ampara. The final risk analysis values reduced in Nigambo DS division than the Vattala DS division. The final risk index values goes to the Vattala DS division. It have a more risk than for the Nigambo DS division. The lesson learned from the wave 17 exercise. The wave 17 exercise has conducted to evacuating 5 GN division which are located in the tsunami early warning towers. So these are these 5 early warning towers name and the evacuated GN divisions and the identified safety centers. So these pictures are representing the evacuation day of this tsunami exercise, and how the people gathered in these evacuation centers and how they are working when you enter to the evacuation center. And there are several issues we identified from this exercise. When you are conducting, there are a lot of errors and early warning messages. It's not very clear for the general public because of the some areas have a rainy situation and some area have a wind situation. So according to the weather, this sound has differed. And the distance from the safety center from the evacuated GN division. Some areas it is very far from the GN division to the safety center. Another important thing is this Nigambo site is located in the narrow bed, and it is belongs to the Nigambo lagoon and the sea. Therefore, the evacuation routes are very dangerous and the limited space for the safety centers, because the long period of time we didn't use for these safety centers. Therefore, this not practicing annual practicing for using as for the other flood or landslide hazard. Therefore, these safety centers also need to be developed. So this is some maps how the dangerous routes are and the distance from the evacuation centers, evacuation village from the evacuation center. Conclusion. Now we come into the presentation. Sri Lanka has introduced the, when we summarize for this presentation, this is mainly Sri Lanka introduced Disaster Management Act in 2004 after 2005 after the tsunami incident, and it's as a result of that established the legal and institutional mechanism of disaster risk management. And there are 5 tsunami early warning towers located in our study area, and this wave 17 exercise give the more important lessons to develop the future tsunami risk reduction activities. And for develop this tsunami risk reduction activities, conducted hazard, vulnerability and consequence analysis for this study area. According to the risk assessment, Vattala need to be developed more capacities to reduce the risk of the tsunami. And this, according to the lesson learned from the wave 17, this is the recommendation for the future tsunami development. For each DS division, have the more tsunami early warning tower system. It is consisting of tsunami early warning towers, and it's better to develop siren system for each coastal division with the electrical siren, and to identify officers for the voluntarily to maintain this electrical siren. It's also very important. And the early warning dissemination center, DMC, or other technical agencies can directly contact with this officer to operate these towers manually. So it will be, according to the new technology, we can identify the low cost system than the current early warning towers to reduce this different kind of issues, technical issues. And another important thing is we can introduce the natural barriers as well as the constructed barriers. But more attention for the natural barriers, we introduced for the sand barriers and the vegetation barriers like coconut trees to this coastal belt. And without restrictions for the development works, if we conducted with the community-based activities with the communities, then to developing tourism with the community in this restriction zone with the natural barriers, then it will be good for the economy of coastal belt people. And another important thing is we need to be develop some safety routes with constructing bridge or redevelop with the existing canal system like Hamilton Canals is located in the Negombo. Especially for the Negombo DS division need danger to reduce the danger of the or reduce the risk of the community, need to improve some construction structural mitigation activities. So finally, we use some references for identify this tsunami risk for the west and east coast. And we would like to acknowledge Disaster Management Center, District Disaster Management Coordinating Unit Gampaha, and District Secretariat Gampaha, Divisional Secretariat Negombo and Wattala, District Disaster Management Coordinating Unit from Kerala and Badulla gave their support for the Wave 617 exercise, and non-government organization, UN committees, and the volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadika Tanage. The study covers both tsunami risk assessment as well as Wave 17 national simulation exercise and the evaluation of the national simulation exercise. And especially, the covering the aspect of last mile communication is very important, which is being discussed as a very important fact when it comes to early warning generation and dissemination. So, floor is open for questions for Mrs. Nadika Vitanage.
Yes, Ms. Nadika, very interesting presentation again. Now in the country level, we have this National Tsunami Disaster Risk Reduction Strategies. Then after that, apart from that, the regional disaster risk reduction strategies and local level. So you have very nicely highlighted the point of the need of the local level tsunami disaster risk reduction strategies. So when you were presenting, it was interesting to see, have you compared this information with other districts, and compared to other districts, what is the unique feature of this Gampaha district? If you have identified any strengths, any weaknesses, maybe the community participation, maybe high density, have you come across with any? Is Nadika with us? I don't think so.
Yes, Nadika is with us. Nadika, you have to unmute your microphone.
Hello? I think we can't hear you, Nadika. You have to unmute yourself, I guess. You have unmuted yourself. Still, we can't hear you.
I think we have a technical difficulty here. So we'll move to the next presentation, but we can, at the end of the session, we can, if she managed to get back, we can get the answer for your question, Dr. Chaturangani.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, let's move on to the last presentation. Last but not least, the title of the presentation is Youth Volunteers as Change Agents in Disaster Risk Reduction in Sri Lanka. This will be presented again by Ms. Nadika Itanage. Over to you, Nadika.
And this is the content of the presentation. First, introduction. Awareness and education is very vital and important for reduce the DRR in different communities. In 2004, Indian Ocean tsunami killed around 35,000 people and identified that it was due to the lack of awareness among the people. Disaster Management Center has been conducting several programs to create awareness among public as well as the stakeholders in disaster management. Disaster Management Center has established village disaster management committees in vulnerable villages. And these committees comprise with the volunteers of the village. The members of the Youth Council and the trainees of Youth Corps can play a major role in disaster risk reduction activities such as creating awareness among the public, assisting community to sudden evacuation, search and rescue. We can utilize them as the agent of DRR in the community. Once the youth are made aware of the disaster risk reduction concept and joined with the existing disaster management mechanism, they can play a major role of strengthening DRR mechanism. National Council of Disaster Management, chaired by the Chair, the President, proposed to develop a national level mechanism to establish youth volunteers teams in 2013. This was the beginning of this program, and Disaster Management Center and the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Skills Development has get together and established volunteer teams in district level and divisional levels to establish sustainable mechanism to assist vulnerable communities. Disaster Management Center has carried out several DRR programs to targeting the different type of youth groups, and actually for every year DMC has trained more than 5,000 youth groups. The major objective is these programs is joining with the mission of Disaster Management Center and establish a culture of safety among the public towards the safer Sri Lanka to establishing Disaster Management Youth Volunteer, DMYV. This is the short form of this program, and to establish this and strengthening this DM groups to continuation of the disaster management mechanism. There are several specific objectives to fulfill this program, to create a volunteer groups to support, to implement and identify disaster risk reduction activities within the communities, to strengthen the capacity of youth communities, to increase involvement in the decision-making process of disaster management in youth communities, to develop DRR learning materials for youth volunteers. This program is divided into three spaces, and the first is the identification of the youth groups, and the second is the identification of resources and the establishment of the youth team. To develop this program, first the Disaster Management Center identified and established the committee, and this committee is with the Director of Awareness and the Assistant Directors and the two other members of this, Dr. Noel and Mr. Chamara, is the beginning partners of this program. And we identified Youth Council, Youth Corps and Scout Association as our youth groups to train and aware as the agent of disaster risk reduction mechanism. And thereafter different technical agencies identified to train these youth communities, including Disaster Management Center and the official of the District Disaster Management Coordinating Unit, Ministry of Health, Ministry and Army Navy Air Force officers, And our technical agencies, Meteorological Department, NBRO and Irrigation System. And this major target to preparation a proper module for this to train these youth volunteers and increase and train their knowledge about the disaster risk reduction. And finally, the important and the major difficult task to utilize these trained volunteers for the DRR activities. Actually, we did 4 pilot program, and this paper is discussed about this, how we conduct this 4 pilot programs to utilize the and train the youth communities to our to engage to our DRR mechanism. And the first pilot program started with the 2015, and it is with the Youth Council official. First, we conduct a national level workshop with the official of Youth Council, and then selected the Polonnaruwa district to conduct the first pilot program. And DMC has arranged meeting with the district secretary and district with the district disaster management coordinating unit Polonnaruwa, and the assistant director of DMC has organized this program with the support of ISO officials in district level and divisional level. And they selected volunteers to cover the entire district and for each DN division for and to cover whole district. Then we conducted 3-day programs, and this the program. It's included for the disaster management concept and how the disaster management coordination mechanism, what are the disasters available, and how this disaster management center, district coordination unit working to reduce this disaster. Then the second day, the first aid program, is practical session and leadership techniques included. And the third day is the fire safety, and finally another leadership techniques also we discussed, and we gave the priority for the practical session. So this is the 3-day program how we conduct with the Polonnaruwa youth community. These are the problems and lessons learned for this program. And first is the less attendance, and attendance are changed gradually, as well as the some very important topics are missing in the first module. And we identified some limited time duration, and we didn't have a proper method to evaluate their knowledge. And another thing is we didn't allow the certificate in for this first program. And we recommended to the second program should be the residential program. And we try to change this module, and we add several important topics for the second module. And we as well as we increase the time duration, and another important things we add this pre-test and post-test for the trainers, how to evaluate this program. And also we introduce the certificates for the second program. In the second program, we combined Youth Council and Youth Corps official, and started in 2016. And we conduct a national level meeting with Youth Council and Youth Corps officials. Thereafter, we selected Ratnapura district to conduct the second pilot program. And then meeting has done with the district secretary and district disaster management coordination unit in Ratnapura, and the district youth council officials and provincial youth corps officials. Then selected volunteer groups representing from each DN division to cover the entire district. And we identified resource persons from the DMC, Ministry of Health, and Triforces, and other technical agencies, volunteer experts, and from the NGOs. And thereafter, we developed the draft module for the 4-day residential session. We started with the pre-test, then we trained them for the disaster management concept and disaster coordination mechanism in the Ratnapura district. And for whole day spent for the first aid program, practical program. And the night we conduct the leadership techniques program with the fire night, and fire safety program in third day. Thereafter, with the Triforces, we conduct the life-saving programs, and all the fire equipments are use them with the volunteer team to train. And the 4th day, camp management program, and we conduct the post-test for the pre-test and post-test, the paper is same, and we want to check how they are pre-knowledge and how they are gain knowledge after the program. And finally, we develop a simulation exercise and conduct with them how to do national to local level disaster management mechanism, and they did it as for the volunteers. So it's the way we selected the community youth communities from the Ratnapura district for representing each DS division. We selected 15 group, and altogether we received more than 200 volunteers, and we divided again this into the two groups and combining with the few DS divisions. Then we conducted the 4-day residential sessions in separately. After that, for one session again conducted for the whole group to train the simulation exercise. Then the final day in Abalipitiya Army Camp, we conduct the large scale simulation exercise. And this is the way how we conduct with the, and how we handle with the large group with the number of technical agencies and the trained group of disaster management center. And this is the large scale training simulation exercise session in Amripitiya. They conducted water related and other ground level disaster risk reduction simulation activities with the Army, Navy, Air Force. And finally, the hardest part of the establish and utilize these youth teams in 2017. This after complete 6 months completed, we again invite these volunteers. Then the 600 volunteers came voluntarily. Thereafter, we introduced them to the district's secretary of Ratnapura in 2017 May. In 2017 May flood situation, they were worked to the our Ratnapura district disaster management coordinating unit. So this is the good opportunity to utilize them and good opportunity to them to learn how to work in the disaster situation as the volunteer. And gradually this number is changed, and again in 2018 flood more than 50 volunteers came in the same group to give to support for the flood act. These are the major issues we learned from the second pilot program. Especially the youth teams are very dynamic and highly transformed. Another thing is high cost of module printing, training materials, resource person, accommodation, and history staff for handling this kind of a program. Then we recommended to register for the few volunteers for the few period of time. And another thing is we are working this kind of a work to aware the youth communities. Therefore, we try to plan for develop this with the joint mechanism. Third pilot program has conducted with the National Youth Corps since from 2017 to up to now. DMC has signed a MOU with officials of Youth Corps. Then we selected the Youth Corps trainers for the third pilot program. Then according to the MOU, DMC has provided the training materials and resource person, and the National Youth Corps has promised to provide the hall facilities, accommodation and transport and meals. Then we selected 48 youth centers, and we beginning session we plan to conduct one program for one district, combining and joining with all the other centers into that district. So we first signed with the MOU with the officials of the Youth Corps, and we conducted several training and theoretical and practical session, and provided the certificates for each trainers. So these are the modules we prepared for this program, and it was a very interesting program among the DMC officials and the Youth Corps, and very good participation we saw from the program. And this is also the some problems for the third pilot program because we conducted one program for the one district. It was very difficult to the Youth Corps side to gathering all the youth members to the one place. Another thing is difficulty to bring the resource person from Colombo to this relevant district. and the continuation of this program. We saw some such problem, and we plan for the second layer as for the conducting one training session for each youth center. Then another thing is decentralized. For the first stage, we conducted this program for all the resource person and officials. Went to the district from the national level. Then we plan to find the resources and all the things from the district level. And for continuation, we plan to include this DRR concept and the subject into the youth corps curriculum. In 2018, we shifted to another area of the youth training program. Scout Association has invited the DMC to conduct the training program, and we trained 400 Scout officials in with the 8 groups, and it's a 4-day program. It was also a very successful program, and there are several sectors, and the national and international Scouts members are participated for this program. So now we come to the conclusion of this presentation. Actually, when we summarize this paper, Disaster Management Center has started to train the youth from 2012. Then we are gradually conducting different kind of a training program for the different youth members, especially Youth Council, Youth Corps, and the Scout Association. And youth are very dynamic, and they are changing, they are transferring one place to one sector to another. Therefore, we can be utilized them for the short period of time. And there are very energetic group. And in 2016, Colombo flood, 2016 Kegol landslide, 2017 Ratnapura flood and landslide, and 2019 dead body handling event in Colombo Hospital. They were participated. And youth training programs is more popularized program under the disaster awareness agency. So this is the recommendation. The challenges of participation in community-based projects. Very little has been written on the motivation of these who volunteers, and even less on the incentives and barriers to youth volunteers in less developed countries like Sri Lanka. It is time to country to start initiating centralized and coordinated database system for government to develop policy and strategy and guidelines. This should be carried out in a consultation with local, national, and international concert agencies. And further research in this sector is much needed for the further planning, designing, and implementation of the comprehensive disaster management program. And these are some references we use this program. And we want to be acknowledged: Disaster Management Center, District Disaster Management Coordinating Unit, National Disaster Relief Center, Ministry of Health, National Youth Council, National Youth Corps, Scout Association of Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka Army Navy Air Force, Sri Lanka Red Cross to give their support to success for this program.
Thank you very much, Radhika. Thank you very much for that interesting presentation. The youth volunteers and youth leaders, major part of disaster response activities, and having this kind of programs to motivate them, train them, build their capacities, and empowering them is very important. So, floor is open for any questions. And Radhika, you can also answer for the previous question if your technical issues have already been sorted out.
I think we can't still hear you, Radhika. Sorry, not yet. We can't still hear you. Sorry about the technical issue. So yeah, I have a question for this one, but I'm not sure whether Radhika will be able to answer. for that question. Maybe you will be able to type the answer if you're all right with that. Yeah. Okay. So it is very interesting area because you opened up the discussion to a very unique.
Dr. Chaturangani, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. You can hear me, right? So I was telling, I can ask the question, Nadika, if you are all right, you can type the answer on the chat box so we can share it with the audience. So I was asking, it would be interesting to know how do you manage the long-term continuation of this type of projects? Because once you train 200, let's say 200 youth volunteers, with the time they will move on with their lives, they will be get busy with their professional lives, and these volunteers will go away. So how do you train another 200 volunteers, youth volunteers? How do you manage the continuation of this type of project, Nadika? You can type the answer while you are giving that answer. Are there any questions to any other presenters?
Yes, a question from my side. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Because I'm not that sure whether Ms. Nadika Vitanage is the person known to me before, because I think we met in 2016. We were conducting community-based training programs. Sri Lanka Navy assisted them as the resource personnel for those community-based training programs, like the youth voluntary teams, for train them as first responders. So it was there at that time, but I am not sure whether it continues now. So my question is, what happened to that? And nowadays, I don't see these trainings are conducted, because there was no request from DMC or any other organization because we have our trainers, but nowadays there's no such invitations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dumit, for your question. Like, yeah, it would be interesting. That's why I also asked the same question. It would be interesting to know how do you manage the continuation of this youth volunteerism program. Hope we will get the answer by chat. Till that time, any more questions to any other presenters? We had 5 interesting presentations. We are running out of the time. I think we have another 3 minutes or so to conclude the session. Just 2:15 we have to.
Yes, but we also have a recording of a presentation coming from the second presenter, even though the team is not present in this call. But we can take it this particular presentation, post-disaster reconstruction for resilient community, lessons learned through post-tsunami reconstruction and post-conflict housing project Sri Lanka. Paper has been presented by M. Gunasekara, P. Rupasinghe, D. Chanaka, U. Samarakon, and A. Pereira. Dr. Chaturangani will take this presentation as well. Then I think we have done the justice for the efforts of these researchers. Thank you, Gayan. Roshan, can we have the presentation now?
conducted to understand the strength and weakness. Greetings from Sri Lanka Red Cross Society. This post-disaster reconstruction for resilient community, lesson learned through post-tsunami reconstruction and post-conflict housing project paper was written as a result of a study conducted to understand the strength and weakness of two approaches used by Sri Lanka Red Cross Society housing construction project. According to 2013 World Bank report, losses of properties due to disasters are 20 times greater in developing countries than in developed countries, and majority of these buildings are houses. If we look from the social cultural perspective, house is not a mere building. Rather, it is a place that provides sense of belonging, dignity, and identity to its inhabitants. So, as I mentioned earlier, once people affected from either man-made disaster or natural disaster, it is important to help them to return to their normal living condition, or what we say, build back better. This can only be done if we help them to stand again as a resilient community. Twigg, in his book of Characteristics of Disaster Resilient Community, describes 5 components of resilience. So, especially in a project like a post-disaster reconstruction, it is important to understand these components well, and implementers should consider these components embedded in their long-term plan. In Sri Lanka Red Cross Society housing projects, mainly 2 approaches were used as housing approaches, mainly owner-driven and donor-driven housing projects. So, owner-driven housing projects, which has more community participation and provide adequate technical support, financial assistance throughout the project. And donor-driven housing projects, the government and external agency who is funding the project will lead the reconstruction process with the help of consultants and contractors procured for the project. Throughout this presentation, I will take for example done by Sri Lanka Red Cross Society with the help of other stakeholders. Tsunami housing project was in 2004, and post-conflict housing project, which was started in 2010. In both projects, many stakeholders were involved, especially the government of Sri Lanka. After each project, Sri Lanka Red Cross Society conducted evaluations to understand the benefits and disadvantages of using these 2 approaches. So, as for the lesson learned of owner-driven project, the organization was able to conduct social impact assessments and constructor-related technical assessment on time, and community was able to engage in the process from the beginning to the end, and this gave them a sense of belonging. Also, Sri Lanka Red Cross Society conduct number of livelihood, mental health, and psychosocial programs to empower the resilient community. Apart from that, number of initiatives were taken to uplift the local economy level. So, if we turn to the lesson learned from the donor-driven project, though there were some positive factors such as being able to hand over the houses within the deadline, and there were some kind of consistency of the procedure, number of disadvantages were highlighted during the study, and 2 main factors were repeatedly highlighted as disadvantages. So, one of the major disadvantages was the stakeholder issues. For example, during the Tsunami housing project, there were 26 partner Red Cross societies were involved in the tender process. So, tender process itself took 10 months to clear the decisions and procurement. And also due to these stakeholder issues, there was problem for selecting beneficiaries, ownership of land, legal and information documentation, and also many partners had the lack of cultural sensitivity. The second main disadvantage highlighted was negligence of beneficiaries, which led to the dissatisfaction among beneficiaries. So if we went through the above all factors, these factors shows that using owner-driven approach is kind of more reliable in terms of both beneficiaries and the donor, especially for long-term projects to receive the sustainable outcome of the entire process. So as I mentioned earlier, resilience will only build if affected people feel empowered and secure. So this can be done through a well-managed, owner-driven project. So thank you. A special acknowledgement goes to the General Sri Lanka Red Cross Society, Housing Project Staff, Sri Lanka Red Cross Society. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have the team here with us today to take questions from you. But that's very interesting presentation again on owner-driven and donor-driven housing, which is a very important discussion happening in, I think, in most countries in the region. So with that, we are coming to an end of all the presentations have been presented. So we can take any questions if there are any questions for the presenters. Dr. Yadev is here. So Dayananda, Nadika is of course is here, and Mr. Premalal is still with us, and we can take any questions from anyone if there are any further questions.
It looks like no more questions for our presenters. So I would like to summarize our presentation, key points that we gathered from these presentations. Mr. Sarak Premalal opened up the discussion to a very interesting area by pointing out the possible tsunami threats, tsunami moderations, and therefore the need of the continuous focus on the tsunami disaster risk reduction strategies. And then relating to that, Nadika's presentation on developing tsunami risk reduction strategies for Gampaha district highlighted the point, apart from the national level strategies, the need of the local level strategies as well. And then Sri Lanka Navy's approach towards effective and efficient emergency response mechanism. Duminder's presentation was very interesting and highlighted the need of the multi-hazard early warning, which is very much matching with the theme of the symposium as well, not only for tsunami, but for flooding, whatever the frequent disasters. And then we had this presentation on youth volunteerism, which is also highlighted for any type of projects to make it to a practical level and implementation. The participation of the community and participation of the youth groups are important. And then Mr. Yadav's, Dr. Yadav's presentation, he opened up the discussion to a very different area, not only for disaster, but to the day-to-day life of the cities. Managing these microclimatic conditions are really important. So I hope you all agree with me that it's very interesting and very fruitful discussion we had today with this technical session. So thank you very much for my co-chair, of course, Dr. Buddhika Hapuarachi, and for all the presenters and for the audience. Thank you very much. Dr. Buddhika, do you want to add anything?
No, Dr. Chaturangani, just to echo what you have just mentioned, thank you very much. It's quite interesting to see, from a wide spectrum of research we could discuss in this technical session. So all are very important and pertinent issues we have touched in this presentation. So thank you very much, everyone, for your valuable contribution and also for the participation. Thank you very much.
And sir, I would like to say something.
Yes, Dr. Yadev.
Sir, I'm really.
Yes, Dr. Yadev.
I convey my hearty thanks that you people given me an opportunity to speak and share my views with you all, and also that I have learned that how you people are dealing with the disasters and how you are managing all the stuffs and the scenario of what you have learned from the previous tsunami events and now how you are coping with this. So I'm really, once again, I would like to thanks to a chair and co-chair. Thank you very much, sir, very much.
Thank you very much. And at the same time, we can see some old friends have met through the Zoom discussion. Mr. Mantap and Loirego, I can see there's some chatting is happening. That's also wonderful to see. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I think that's all the purpose of having this type of session, to share our knowledge, to get to know each other. So hopefully once this COVID is over, let's see you face to face. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everyone. Thank you very much. Good night.